When you think of the Playboy Mansion, you probably think of glitz, glamour, and those legendary parties, right? For 7 years, Holly Madison lived that life as Hugh Hefner's girlfriend. But today, we're digging into her story, which, as you'll see, reveals a reality that was way more complex and, frankly, more troubling than what we saw on the surface.
And this quote from Holly herself really just says it all. It points to this huge divide between what happened in private and what happened when the doors were open and the party was on. And that divide is exactly what we're going to get into. So, what was life really like inside what many have called a gilded cage? To even begin to understand her experience, we have to start with the basics of this very famous and, let's be honest, very controversial relationship.
First off, we're not talking about a brief fling here. Holly Madison spent 7 years with Hugh Hefner, from 2001 all the way to 2008. I mean, that's a huge chunk of her young adult life, right at the center of the whole Playboy universe.
And, okay, to add another really significant layer to this whole thing, there was this number, 53. That was the age gap between them. And as you can imagine, that fact alone was a constant source of public chatter and judgment. Okay, so now let's go behind those famous closed doors, because this is where the story splits into two very different realities. Holly describes this really sharp, unsettling contrast in their intimate life, and it all depended on who else was around.
And this right here just lays it all out. On the one hand, when it was just the two of them, she said things felt a lot more normal than you would think. But the second other people were involved in group situations, that feeling completely flipped to, in her words, disgusting. I hated it.
And this wasn't something she just kept to herself. She's been very clear that she spoke up about it at the time. She made it known to Hefner and others that she was absolutely miserable with the group sex aspect of life at the mansion. But the pressure wasn't just coming from inside the mansion's walls. She also had to deal with this constant, relentless wave of public judgment about her relationship. I mean, she's talked about how she literally couldn't post anything online without getting flooded with nasty comments about Hefner's age. People saying things like, "Oh, old balls." It was just this nonstop part of her public life. So how did she cope with all of this? Well, she's explained that the environment itself became a kind of defense mechanism. A lot of the intimacy happened with the lights off, and she used that old saying, "all cats are gray in the dark," to explain how that darkness helped her get through these really uncomfortable situations. All right, so let's fast forward a few years. After she's left that life behind, Holly's whole view of Hefner and of their entire relationship started to change, and it became a lot darker. See, while she was in it, she genuinely believed she was building this real deep, emotional connection with Hefner. She thought it was more than just the glitz and glamour, that there was something truly intimate there.
But looking back on it all now, it's a completely different story. With time and distance, she came to this really stark and painful conclusion that what she thought was a real connection was, in her words, the work of a master manipulator. And you can imagine that kind of realization makes you re-examine, well, everything. It wasn't just about how she saw Hefner anymore. It was about how she saw her younger self during those 7 years. When she looks back now, the person she sees is someone she describes as young, incredibly impressionable, and just trying to get through this high-pressure world while, as she puts it, being in a mental fog.
So why does all of this matter? Well, her journey really gives us this incredibly personal look at the emotional cost of a relationship like that. It paints a picture of life, fame, and power that is so much more complicated than what we ever saw in the magazines.
At the end of the day, her story pushes us past the celebrity headlines to think about something much bigger, something about memory itself. And it leaves us with this question to chew on. How does time change the stories we tell, not just to other people, but to ourselves?